What's up, gamers? It's your boy, JKon. Welcome to another episode of Rostermania. In the last two videos, we covered all the moves that have happened so far in Pacific and Americas, so today's video, we'll be continuing that trend and looking at all the moves that have happened in EMEA so far. If you missed the previous videos, feel free to go check them out after watching this one. Now, without further delay, let's get into it. We'll start with Navi, who are channeling their inner Phoenix and are running it back, signing ardiis in place of cNed and returning the Scoozer to the team that he won a Masters with. Navi has been in the Valorant scene for quite a while and originally had a team with young talents SSK and Cloud, but moved away from the full CIS identity when they were accepted into franchising, as they signed 4 members and the coach of FunPlus Phoenix, who were not accepted into franchising and now have a team competing under their banner in China. Navi would enter 2023 with Angel, Zipan, Xiao, Suigetsu, and cNed with coach Doombros. They were definitely cooking a lot this year and found decent success, placing 2nd in the regular season and 4th in playoffs. They were able to qualify for Masters Tokyo, but were grouped. They participated in LCQ, and because of Fnatic winning Tokyo, they were able to attend Champions as EMEA's 5th seed. They were really close to getting out of groups and had many moments being on series point, but they couldn't get it over the line and once again were grouped. And that leads us to where we are today, where the star Turkish duelist has left the roster and the Latvian has returned from his vacation in North America. The 6 members that have reconvened were absolutely dominant throughout 2022. They would win the stage 1 of CIS challengers and qualify for EMEA challengers. They would then dominate their group, going 4-1 and topping it, giving them a semi-finals berth in the playoffs. They would proceed to 2-0 Liquid and Fnatic, meeting G2 in the finals, where they would hoist the trophy, winning 3-1 and qualifying to Masters Reykjavik. Unfortunately for them, because of the war in Ukraine occurring at this time, Angel, Xiao, and Suigetsu were unable to make it to the event, so they had to give their slot over to G2. In stage 2, FPX would not be as dominant, as they would only go 3-2 in the group stage, placing 3rd. A random funny stat that I saw was Ascend, who is the 2nd place in their group and went 4-1, had a negative round differential of 2, going 136 won, 138 lost. FPX would go on to face off against TL in their opening playoff matchup and would once again beat them, going 2-1. They would fall to Fnatic 2-1 and go to the lower bracket, where they would find back-to-back 2-1 wins over Ascend and Mech. They would face Guild in the lower final, sweeping them aside 3-0 to have a rematch against Fnatic. But unfortunately for them, they met the same fate they just doled out, as Fnatic 3-0'd them and claimed the trophy. FPX would be able to attend Masters Copenhagen as EMEA's 2nd seed, where they would be placed in Group B. They would 2-1 Xerxia in their opener, but fell to DRX 2-1. They would meet North Eption for elimination and 2-0 them, giving them a playoff berth. A point of note here is that FPX were playing with Scheider instead of Suigetsu, as he was unable to make it to the event in time. Playoffs would arrive with Suigetsu rejoining his teammates and them suffering a 2-0 loss to Fnatic. This would kick off their legendary lower bracket run, as they would 2-1 Guild, 2-0 DRX, getting revenge on them from group, 2-1 Fnatic, getting revenge from earlier in the playoffs, and 3-1 Optic Gaming in the lower finals. They would meet Paper Rex in Grants, and after a thrilling 5-map series, FPX were able to claim the trophy and complete their run. There were some incredible moments that will stand the test of time from this run, including ardiis' amazing 1 HP 1v4 clutch against DRX, and Suigetsu cleanly finishing off Paper Rex on Breeze to win the tournament. FPX would look to win back-to-back trophies heading into Champions. They would be placed in Group C, where they would 2-0 Crew in their opening matchup. They would then go on to face Xset, where they would proceed to lose 2-1, giving them a rematch against Crew to see who escaped groups. Fortunately for them, they had the LATAM side's number, as they would 2-0 them once more and head to playoffs. They would once again face off against their Korean rivals in DRX and lose 2-0, setting them up for another lower bracket run. FPX would 2-0 Leviathan and meet Xset once more. This time they would be victorious over the American side, but not without controversy, as in the last map, Ascent, there was a Killjoy bug on round 24 that caused the turret to aim in the wrong direction, giving false information. Riot issued a competitive ruling to have both teams replay the final round, which came with much annoyance to the players. FPX were able to maintain their win by taking the dub in overtime, and would go on to face DRX again, and would once again get 2-0'd by the Koreans, as their year was now over. Like I said earlier, in 2023, everyone moved over to the Navi banner sans ardiis, as he took his talents to Venice Beach. He had a pretty solid year on NRG, but they did flame out near the end of the year with an embarrassing showing at Champions. He has now moved back over the Atlantic and rejoined his squad. I personally like the move a lot, as I think ardiis provides another strong voice on the team that definitely looked like it was missing this year. Angel is known to have a strong voice and personality, and of course as the IGL, that's great to have, but when you don't have people pushing back on those ideas, it can become an echo chamber, and I think ardiis is one of those guys that is willing to push back. Navi have definitely memed about this in their ardiis announcement video, so I think his fit is very good. Ardiis definitely struggled at times throughout the year, especially during his Keithjoy arc, but I think he is still extremely talented and had a few bad series. From what we heard from Finesse, they didn't have the best environment throughout the year and they were expecting to break up. I think Navi will continue to be a contender in their region, and having more familiarity and chemistry might show for next year. Xiao and Suigetsu are still world-class talents, and adding ardiis back to the roster gives them more incentive to play their comfortable roles rather than forcing the issue like they did throughout this year. Definitely look for ardiis and Navi as a whole to have a bounce back year. Speaking of cNed, the ex-Navi member has also found himself returning home as he is signed to FUT Esports for 2024 and is replacing Kiwi on the roster. cNed has not played on a Turkish roster since 2020, where he left BBL to join Nolpenki and kick off his international career. He would then join Raise Your Edge, which turned into Ascend, and was Valorant's first champion as his team took the trophy over Gambit in 2021. He would remain with Ascend throughout 2022, but the team would not find much success as they also had a revolving door of members as their championship winning roster of cNed, Boncold, Zeke, Starzo, and Kiles fell apart. He would not be able to attend any international events and would leave the org in 2023, joining Navi. He would expand his agent pool playing Raze, Neon, Yoru, and Omen, and like I said earlier, they found decent success, but overall didn't have the best year compared to all of their previous success. I'm quite excited for this signing as cNed is still one of the best duelist players in his region and honestly has become quite underrated. I don't think his potential really showed too much on Navi as they did have constant role swaps, but he's still really good. I personally like Kiwi a lot and thought that he developed a ton, but he did have a poor champions, and although he is one of the best Neon players in the world, when an upgrade is available, you gotta take it. And it's not like cNed's Neon is that bad either, it's actually pretty good in my opinion. The thing that I really liked about FUT as a whole is how they were able to set up Kiwi, and I think getting a more consistent fragger in that role will help their system flourish more. They also have Cracks still on the roster who is more than capable of playing Raze, so if they aren't confident in cNeds or they want to run double duelist, they are more than capable. Also, there has to be something to be said about an all native language roster as they have seen large success in other esports. For example, until FaZe Clan CSGO roster won the Antwerp major in 2022, every other major winning team spoke the same native language. I think we're moving more towards international combinations finding success as Vitality has won the most recent and final CSGO major combining French, Danish, and Israeli talent, and in Valorant we've seen Ascend, FPX, and Fnatic all pick up trophies with mixed international talent. I think returning to Turkey is great for cNed, and I'm excited to see his future with this roster as I think he is an upgrade, and they did show a lot of improvement playing their own style this past year. The other move that FUT have made coming into the new year is that they have dropped their longest standing member in Moj and replacing him with the young gun yetujey. Yetujey is a Sentinel main who has been playing in tier 2 for FunPlus Esports. He's been a part of the Turkish organization since late 2021 and played for their academy team FunPlus Young until late 2022. He was promoted to the main roster for 2023 and saw immediate success as they were able to top the regular season in challengers, going 8-1 but fell short in the playoffs as they fell to S2G Esports 3-1 in the semifinals. In Split 2, they would continue their group stage dominance, going 7-1, but would burn out in the playoffs once again as they lost to Galatasaray Esports 2-1 and Digital Athletics 2-0, missing out on Ascension and ending their year. Yetujey was a top 5 player in both splits that played at least 100 rounds, with him playing 548 and 546 respectively. He has a lot of potential going forward. I think he is a great addition to FUT. I don't think that Moj was the worst, but I don't think he was the best, and losing a veteran that has been a face of your organization is definitely hard, but Nubla getting a shot is A1 in my books. From what people have said, it's most likely a side grade, but he has a higher ceiling than Moj, so I can definitely see him growing and developing over time. He was seen a bit akin to Alpha here, a sick fragger on Sentinel that played in tier 2 Turkey, so we'll see if he can have an explosive entry on the scene like his fellow countryman. FUT have unveiled this roster at the Red Bull Homeground EMEA Qualifier, where they were able to sweep the event, winning 3 best of 1s against the new team Heretics 13-6, Focus 16-14, and G2 goes in 13-5. They would face off against Focus again in the grand finals and would take them down 3-0, qualifying for the main Red Bull Homeground event. cNed and Cracks were absolutely farming, and although yetujey did struggle a bit, he still showed a lot of potential. Yes, this is a tier 3 event, and they did play with their coach in the grand finals, but they showed promise, which is what fans want. I still think that Adacaptain is one of the most underrated players in the world, and he was FUT's best player throughout the year in my opinion, especially the impact he had when he joined the main roster full time. FUT have a lot of potential to grow and should look to continue the success that they had this past year. I like this team a lot and will be rooting for them. Speaking of the Red Bull Homeground Qualifier, Team Heretics have unveiled their new roster to participate in the event. They have retained Boo and benjyfishy from their LCQ roster and have brought in 3 new Zoomers to the squad in Woot, Riens, and MiniBoo. Yes, MiniBoo is Boo's younger brother, and I think that's such a sick brother name combo. Shout out to Kong, who uses his brother's IGN in his name, but it's a little different than the Boos. Anywho, I love this rebuild that Heretics have done, as I was not that big of a fan of their 2023 roster. They have completely rebuilt from that time, dropping Zeke, Avova, Kellogg's, and Mixwell has retired aside from professional play. I've always liked Mixwell as a person and as a player, so it's a bit sad to see him retire at this time, but he definitely was on the tail end of his career. I think he will continue to have great success as the face of Spanish FPS and as a content creator. I think Heretics 2023 building philosophy was very poor, bringing in a core of old G2 that didn't work together, but they have completely flipped that in my eyes as they have brought in 4 youngsters to this team. We'll start with benjyfishy as he was the first addition to this roster. He joined the team prior to LCQ as they asked Riot for an emergency replacement after they dropped Zeke from their roster and were playing with their assistant coach Weber for a lot of the season. Benji made his name in Fortnite playing under the NRG banner, winning 5 A-tier tournaments and placing top 6 at 2 S-tier tournaments. He retired from the game and switched over to Valorant in 2022. He would participate in tier 3 events and eventually join Enterprise Esports and compete in the Polish Challengers League in 2023. In Split 1, his team placed second in the regular season, going 13-5, only behind Ascend. They were able to win their opening semi-final matchup against Rapid Ninjas, but would fall to the aforementioned Ascend 2-0. Enterprise would 2-0 Anonymous Esports in the lower final and would have a rematch against Ascend in the grand finals. Unfortunately, they would continue to go winless as Ascend took the series 3-0. In Split 2, Enterprise would not be as dominant as they finished 4th in the regular season, going 10-8. In phase 1 of the playoffs, they would beat Zero Tenacity 2-1, but would fall to Anonymous Esports 2-0. They would go on to rematch Zero Tenacity, and just like last time, they would 2-1 them and make it to phase 2. There, they would go on to face Ascend once more, but this time it was a little different as they took a map off Ascend as they were sent to the lower bracket. Enterprise would go on to get revenge on Anonymous 2-0 and facing off against Diamond Esports, Vitality Runners team, in the lower final. They would win the highly contested series 3-2 and go on to face their demons in Ascend and Grands. There, they got deja vu from the last grand finals as they were once again put down 3-0. benjyfishy would then leave the team and join Heretics for their aforementioned LCQ run, where they were eliminated after their first matchup against Koi 2-1. Benji has definitely shown a lot of potential for this game, and although he put up decent numbers in challengers, he did struggle a bit in LCQ, but he joined a pretty dysfunctional team. I think he can grow a lot more, and with him being joined by fellow young players, I think their development can only go forward. Speaking of young players, let's talk about the Turkish duo that Heretics have brought in. We'll start with Woot, who is one of the most sought after prospects in tier 2 this past season. Woot played for FunPlus Esports along with yetujey and was definitely their standout player with him. He absolutely farmed tier 2 throughout this past year and has a ton of potential coming into the big leagues. I think that he is the biggest acquisition for this roster, as I think he has superstar potential. He primarily plays the Flash Initiator role now, but has flexed the controller consistently. He was originally a duelist main and has played Jet, Neon, Raze, and Phoenix, so his ability to slot into almost any role is seamless, and coming into a team that is rebuilding, I think he will have a lot to offer. Turkey seems to produce a lot of world-class talent, so I definitely have my eyes on him and his future. The other Turkish talent Heretics have brought in is Riens. Riens is another tier 2 prospect that has spent this past year on S2G Esports. He put up solid numbers throughout the year, being the primary initiator player for his team while also flexing a Viper if needed. In Split 1 of Challengers, S2G Esports would place 4th in the regular season, going 6-3. They would go on a dominant run throughout playoffs, 2-0ing Istanbul Wildcats, 3-1ing Fireflux Esports, and 3-0 sweeping Papara Supermassive in the grand finals, winning the event. Riens would be a top 20 player throughout the split and the best player on his team. In Split 2, S2G would improve on the regular season, going 6-2 and placing 2nd. During the playoffs, they would take back-to-back 2-1 wins over Supermassive and Galatasaray Esports and would meet Digital Athletics in the grand finals. They unfortunately couldn't win back-to-back events as they got swept 3-0 and had to play in EMEA Ascension play-ins. Riens improved his numbers from Split 1 and was a top 10 player throughout the split and continued to be S2G's star. S2G would be able to go 1-1 in their Ascension play-in group, beating Mouse 13-8 and losing to GTZ Esports 13-11. In the playoffs, they would 2-0 Team Queso, but fell to Focus 3-1 as the latter moved on to the group stage of Ascension. Riens would then leave the team and join Heretics for this upcoming year. He's a very talented initiator player and was one of the best in tier 2 of his region. I think with his potential that he has shown in the past, as well as joining a rebuilding roster, he can continue to develop and get better. It also helps that he will have a fellow countryman in Woot with him on the roster, as comfortability is always a plus. The final piece of this rebuild is MiniBoo. MiniBoo is the younger brother of Boo, the IGL of this roster. He has played in tier 2 of EMEA since 2021 and most recently played for Kase Esports this past year with XSN Kiles. Kase was pretty good in Split 1, going 13-5 in the regular season and absolutely crushed the playoffs, taking 3-1 victories over Falcons and Team Queso to win the event. MiniBoo was one of the best duelists in the split and was able to perform at a top 10 level overall. In Split 2, Kase would have the same regular season record of 13-5, but would place first this time rather than second. They would continue their dominant streak throughout the playoffs as they 3-1 Zeta Gaming, not to be confused with Zeta Division, and 3-2 Team Queso in the grand finals. MiniBoo continued to show why he was one of the best duelists in the event and placed top 7 in rating overall this split. He was Kase's best player with Keyless throughout the year as his team would qualifier for the group stage of EMEA Ascension. Unfortunately for them, they would go winless in their group, going 0-4 in series and 0-8 in maps, ending their year. MiniBoo definitely showed a ton of potential and was very good throughout the year. He will be rejoining his brother, who he hasn't played on a team with since July of 2021. Like I said earlier in the video, I think their rebuilding philosophy was really good. I still rate their coach Neilzinho highly, as he has shown success in his past in Valorant and CS, and going with a young gun rebuild approach is cool to me. Gives me a lot of OKC Thunder vibes if you're into the NBA. We've gotten to see this team in action at the Red Bull Homeground EMEA qualifier, but they were unable to get out of groups as they lost 13-6 to the new look Foot and 15-13 to Focus. They were able to claim a win over G2 Gozen, handing them a perfect 13-0 loss. The three youngbloods that were just added definitely showed out and had pretty solid performances, but benjyfishy did struggle. This roster will definitely not be competing for the trophy right off the bat, especially because Woot will not be old enough to compete by the time the season begins. They will most likely have a stand-in during this time, so I don't anticipate many tallies in the W column. But despite this, I have become a fan of their young talent, and I hope to see them succeed, mostly in the development area. Great job, Heretics. This is a fat W in my book. The final EMEA team that I'll be covering today will be Vitality, as they have finalized their roster for 2024. I talked about them briefly in a previous episode covering the runner signing, so go check that out if you haven't seen it already. Vitality have brought on Sayf, previously of Team Liquid, and Kicks, a young Estonian tier 2 talent. We'll start with the latter, Kicks, who has spent most of his career in tier 2 playing for teams like Human Tripwires, London Esports, and Finest. This past year, he was a part of Bonk, who participated in the Polaris League, playing alongside legendary IGL Bonkar and ex-Apex duelist player Kiko. The team unfortunately went 3-4 in the group stage, placing 5th and missing playoffs. He would leave the roster and join Latirius in the German League for Split 2, but would once again miss out on playoffs, placing 5th place, going 0-2-5 in a best-of-2 system. That was the last time we would see of him, as he has been a free agent since May, but he primarily played the Flash Initiator role. He put up decent numbers on the teams that he was on, so I guess we'll just have to see if he's another project and how he'll develop. The final signing Vitality made to round out the roster was the addition of Sayf. Sayf spent this past year on Team Liquid, being their primary duelist player and really hard carrying that team. They looked extremely lost throughout the early stages of the year, but they were able to come together near the end of the regular season, placing 3rd in the regular split, going 6-3, and winning the inaugural EMEA trophy by beating Fnatic in the grand finals and playoffs 3-1 and handing them their first loss of the year. Liquid were able to attend Masters Tokyo and got a direct slot to the playoffs. They faced off against EDG and were able to beat them 2-1, but then they got destroyed by EG 2-0. They would then face NRG in the lower bracket and were eliminated 2-1, placing 5th-6th at the event. Sayf would be Liquid's hard carry throughout the year, and especially at Tokyo, as his other teammates underperformed. Liquid would then participate in Champions and were slotted into the group of death along with Navi, DRX, and Loud. Liquid would unfortunately suffer back-to-back losses as they went 0-2 against Navi and Loud and quickly exited the tournament. Natus was their only consistent player throughout, as Liquid turned to steam as the rest of the team seemed to disappear in thin air. Liquid have looked to rebuild this offseason, and Sayf has vacated the roster and has now found himself a new home in Vitality. Something I mentioned in my other video was that Sayf said in an interview with seangares that he is looking to transition to a more supportive role, as he gets a lot of satisfaction from seeing people succeed off of his support. I think this is a great mindset to have, because a lot of veterans within the scene are not always willing to set aside their ego to help bring up the next generation, but those who do are the ones that lead and guide the new blood to success. With Vitality bringing in 2 young players and surrounding them with 3 veterans, they definitely have a formula to help develop them. Sayf was a top duelist in EMEA and the world last year, and him stepping aside and helping Runner develop more in that role gives me a lot of hope for his development. With Kicks also being signed to the roster, I'm not 100% sure what role he and Sayf will play, as when I think about setting up my duelist for success, it's usually off of an initiator like Sky or Breach. Sayf will bring a ton of firepower to this team nonetheless, and he is a very vocal player, so I think that will help Destrian as he continues to transition into the IGL role. The team has a lot of potential, so we'll just have to see how the young guns develop and how this team comes together. Now, I said Vitality were the final team that I wanted to talk about, but there is a coach signing in EMEA that I think is pretty big, so I thought I'd mention it. And that signing is Elmapuddy, as he has joined Fnatic as their head coach, as Mini has stepped down during this offseason. When the news first broke that Mini was leaving, I was pretty sad to hear, as he has been such an integral part to this Fnatic squad and what has made them so dominant. His relationship with Boaster was one of the best coach IGL connections that we've seen so far, so him not being on stage with them is a huge loss, but I think taking a break for his health is always a good idea, as he has definitely been grinding for the past few years. I think bringing in Elmapuddy is a pretty good move in my opinion. For those who don't know who Elmapuddy is, he was most recently the head coach of Gen.G and has been a part of the organization for quite a long time. He originally was a coach for an Australian CSGO team called Order that had OCE, CS Staples, Ins, and Alistair. He would eventually move over to North America in 2020 and join Gen.G as they put together a roster consisting of major winner Automatic, Daps, Kusta, Indonesian superstar Bintet, who made his name playing for Tyloo with Xcrit for many years, and Sam, our W stripper. Sam was an up-and-coming talent that started to make a name for himself on Team Envy before he joined this roster. I started to follow Sam's career when he joined Envy, so it's definitely been a blast to see how much he's grown throughout CS and Valorant. I immediately became a fan of this team because of Sam, Automatic, and Bintet, and was rooting for their success. Fun fact, a very popular streamer Stans was the general manager of Gen.G at the time and put together this roster as well as the earlier Gen.G Valorant rosters. Their CS roster was able to successfully win DreamHack Open Anaheim 2020, but as COVID struck the world and CS went online, the roster found decent success but was eventually disbanded, with many of their members transitioning to Valorant. Elmapuddy would have a short stint coaching the Cloud9 Colossus with Zeppa on it, but as that roster fell apart, he would find himself back on Gen.G coaching their Valorant roster that had his previous team member Kusta on it, as well as GMD, Sean, Nature, and Temperature, who was on loan from Evil Geniuses. He would be replacing MCE, who left to build the Guard. This team iteration would compete together at NA's LCQ in 2021, but would not go far as they suffered a 2-1 loss to 100 Thieves to enter the lower bracket. They were able to 2-0 Luminosity, but once again suffered a 2-1 loss, this time at the hands of Cloud9. In 2022, Gen.G would not find much success throughout the year as they did not make it through either Challengers qualifiers and would have to participate in third-party events for most of the year. They would have a revolving door of players coming in and out of the roster. Rhyme, the same who led Giants this past year, was brought in from EMEA to IGL. Kusta would then leave the roster, followed by GMD, who went to an inactive position and then left. JC Stani and PR then joined, but the latter then left, with Snyrod joining on trial. Then Sean and Rhyme both left, with Snyrod, JC Stani, and Nature being moved to inactive, all eventually leaving the roster. It's definitely hard to tell an impact a coach has had, but with so many new players coming in and out, it's definitely hard to find consistency and success. Gen.G would not get a bid for a North American franchise slot as they instead were offered one in Pacific. Gen.G would go back to their Korean roots as they brought in the core of Incheon On Sla2ers, who participated in the East Asia LCQ, going on an incredible lower bracket run after falling to EDG 2-0 in their opening matchup. They would take 2-0 wins over Maru Gaming and Crazy Raccoon, with back-to-back 2-1 wins over K1 Esports and North Eption to meet EDG in the grand finals. Unfortunately for them, EDG were too clean as they swept them 3-0 to complete their own perfect run to make it to champions. Gen.G would keep Elmapuddy as their head coach going into 2023, with Bale joining as the assistant coach, and had King, TS, Eco, Meteor, and Secret on their roster going into lock-in. A roster move that I thought was really funny was that in 2022, Gen.G initially signed Intro as their 5th member, but he left the roster after 2 months to join T1 and be their 6th man throughout the year. Gen.G would unfortunately face off against Loud in their opening matchup at lock-in and would go 2-0 against the Brazilians despite putting up a solid fight. Secret would then leave the roster with Sylvan and Goddead being added, and with the latter joining, he completed the On Slayers core from the previous year. Gen.G would start out the regular season on fire, going 4-0 in series and only dropping a single map. Meteor definitely looked like one of the best duelists in the region, and King was good as ever. Unfortunately for them, they hit a wall and proceeded to lose their next 6 series, only taking 2 maps and find themselves in the lower bracket of playoffs. They would be able to find 1 win against Team Secret 2-1, but their run would end at the hands of T1, who would 2-0 them and take the final slot for Masters Tokyo. Gen.G would then participate in LCQ, taking a 2-1 win over Talent Esports, but would fall to Adobo Gang as they got revenge from playoffs 2-0. Gen.G would go on to face RRQ in the lower bracket, coming out on top 2-1, and once again would meet Team Secret. Unfortunately for them, Secret were absolutely cooking and defeated the Koreans 3-1, ending their year. And that leads us to where we are today, with Gen.G looking at a complete rebuild, only keeping Meteor from 2023. Elmapuddy has found his way to Fnatic and EMEA, and the globetrotting coach has found another region to participate in. I know I've said this in the past, and I'll say it again. We really don't know the impact a coach has on a roster and how much input they may have. Elmapuddy has found success in his past, as well as a lot of failures as his organization struggled with identity, so him joining one of the most stable European organizations in esports and a top roster that is seeing no other changes outside of losing their head coach gives him a very good floor and foundation to build off of. I've been following his career for a while now and will continue that trend as he leads this Fnatic squad. He has a ton of experience and I fully expect him to continue to compete for titles. And that's the video. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think about all these roster moves happening in EMEA. Do you think Navi can claim a trophy now that they've resurrected the Phoenix? Do you think Team Heretics made the right moves in their rebuild? I would love to hear what you guys have to say. If you like this video, consider checking out this video right here where I talk about the newest moves that happened so far in Americas. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay hydrated. Peace.